You're listening to the Flooring Company Marketing Podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping your service-based business grow and thrive using the latest technology in internet marketing. And now, here's the host of our show and the CEO of Grow Inc., Matt Law.
All right, everyone, welcome back to another training episode as we go through our 4-part series on scaling your business. And today we're talking about systems. And this is interesting. You are not going to rise to the level of your goals if you fall to the level of your systems. Today, we are talking all about infrastructure. We're talking about the systems you need to have in place to scale. Now, I've been an entrepreneur for right around 25 years. And when I remember when I was 25 years old, we started a company, and the very first year, it was a mortgage lending business. We were such a mess. Why? Because we had no systems in place. And as we were growing, I remember how much chaos there was. Nobody could do things consistently, or at least it felt like that, where one loan would be smooth, the next one would be chaos, because we did not have any checklists, we did not have any systems, we did not have anything in order, but we were young, we were ambitious, we had a lot of drive, and I was an entrepreneur. And I remember one of the guys that I met in real estate. He said, "Matt, have you read The E-Myth yet?" I said, "No, I haven't read it yet." He's like, "You need to read this book. It's going to help you as an entrepreneur." Saw him a few months later. He said, "Matt, have you read The E-Myth yet?" I said, "No, I haven't read it." He's like, "You need to read this book. It's going to really help you." And for about a year, I bumped into him and he would ask me, "Hey, have you read that book yet?" I'm like, "No, but I bought it. I'm going to read it." And finally, I got it on audio, and this is back 25 years ago. So I got it in audio, I got it on CD, and I listened to it as I was driving on a trip, and my wife and I sat there and listened. And it finally made sense why there was so much chaos. It made sense why walls seemed to fall down upon us, why there wasn't order, there wasn't harmony, and there was always chaos. And so if you've never read The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, first of all, I want to encourage you to pick up a copy of that book. It's a life-changing book for entrepreneurs because they need to have systems in order to grow. What I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly tell you what the book it kind of explains and why it matters to systems. And then we're going to dive in and we're going to talk about different systems that you need in your business. But basically, he said there's 3 roles that every entrepreneur plays in their business. And more than likely, you started off as like a technician. You were the doer. You are the one that does the work. And in your business, you probably know how to do what you sell, and you probably do it really, really well. You're skilled and crafted in this. But if you only do that skill every day and you never work on your business and you're always working in the business, when you're working in the weeds, then you're not going to be able to grow. You're not going to be able to innovate. You're not going to be able to build systems. So many of you started your service business in what Michael Gerber calls it, a entrepreneurial seizure. And I did the same thing. I was doing work. I was doing mortgage work. I was a loan officer working for a company. And I said to myself, anyone can do a better job than this. And so I had this entrepreneurial seizure at age 24, 25, and I launched my first business. And when we launched, we were 25 years old. Now, I had a couple little small businesses before that too. So it's like I had this seizure, but this was the first time that I actually started a company. And the thing was, I was a good technician. I was good at doing loans, but I was not understanding what it meant to be a full entrepreneur, to own a business, to run a business, to manage people. I started off with myself alone doing loans as an entrepreneur, having an entrepreneurial seizure, and the only thing I was a technician. But there's 3 roles that Michael Gerber explains that entrepreneurs have to flow in. The second one is the manager. Well, the manager is the one that organizes things and plans things out. It's the one who focuses on systems, processes, and keeping things running smoothly. And they have this strength to create order and consistency. And sometimes some of their weakness can be stuck in administration and they can be resistant to change, but they build systems. And as a manager, the other thing is the manager does is it keeps people accountable to the systems that they created. And hopefully they are also willing to innovate. And so as I'm listening to this book, I said, well, shoot, I'm not good at managing people. I've never even thought about our systems. I'm basically saying, hey, everybody do a good job, but I never documented what a good job was. Everyone get your loan submitted on time, but what does that mean? Everyone do a complete package, but I did not understand what's a checklist for a package. And so for me, I did not have systems in place. Where I was strong is I was good at being a technician and doing loans, but I was also strong at the third role, which is the entrepreneur. So you have the technician, the guy doing the work, the manager that's building systems and holding people accountable, and then there's the entrepreneur. And so the entrepreneur is the visionary. They see like, hey, we could be huge. And they're thinking about, hey, where are we going? What's next? And they're big picture thinkers. They're innovative and they drive growth. They drive passion. But their weakness is they can get distracted. They can be impatient with details and they're a little bit ADD. So if you listen to my previous episode, a lot of entrepreneurs are ADD-ish where they have all of these ideas, but they won't go back and build systems. So if you spend all your time here as an entrepreneur, you're going to be ADD, have a million ideas started and nothing completed. And if you never spend any time here as an entrepreneur, you won't have any vision or passion or innovation. And so as I read this book, I said, oh my goodness, I am the technician. I just do loans. And then I have these big ideas and I'm like, come on, everybody, do what I'm thinking. And then I'll go back and be a technician, but I never spend any time as the manager building systems, getting things organized. And I said, man, so I read the book and I found I spent all my time as an entrepreneur and a technician, and I would only dream, and I would go do loans, and I'd go back and forth in this crazy cycle. But I did not know how to build a team or organize my company. And because I didn't know how to build systems or be a manager, they struggled, I struggled, and there was this chaos. So after reading the book, I immediately started to build systems and checklists and documentation and all the things that we're going to cover in this book. And people were trained on those systems. They knew what was expected. We set up, hey, we are going to do it like this. Can you do it? Yes, they can. No, they can't. We worked on all of these things and they knew how everything should flow. And for the first time, I remember after a few months, it was really tough at first, there was this harmony in business where people were actually getting along better. Everyone knew what was to be done, and loans and everything became much, much more consistent. It was a very life-changing and powerful moment in business for me. So I will tell you, some of you are probably managing business and it's in total chaos. And you're like, I want to grow, I want to scale. And it's because you don't have standard operating procedures or systems in place. And so you want to grow, but I'm going to tell you, you're never going to grow if you don't have the right systems in place. So we're going to break down the core systems every business needs to scale. And I'm going to go through a couple different segments. So segment one, I would say, or piece one would be your customer management system, customer relationship manager. It will be your CRM. You may have it in a folder somewhere, but hopefully you have it in some sort of technology system that is used in your industry. Maybe you have a custom CRM. There's a lot of different options out there. But what a CRM does and why it matters, it keeps all of the customers' info, their jobs, the communications, all of that in one place. And so some core features that you want in your CRM is leads should flow into the CRM. So if you get a lead online, it should flow on there. It should allow you to dispatch, depending on your industry. It should allow you to schedule jobs. It should allow for notes to be added, like, hey, I called this guy, here's what we talked. It should allow for history. You can quickly find the customer or the prospect in there. It may involve invoices. So some of the times There's CRMs and tools that have invoicing built into the system or payment processing. If sometimes even custom CRMs can have that built in. Some of our clients with simple estimates, they use a custom CRM through NAC that we build. So if they're sending a simple estimate, so it can do estimates, it can do scheduling, it can do invoicing, but basically this is the central hub for customer management, prospect management, and everything. So I'll give you a couple of best practices is that, first of all, these can be very expensive, but when you pick one, you should go all in on it. You should train your team so that it's not just a database, but it's the true command center for your business. And I would not try to switch over and over unless absolutely needed. Most of our clients that come on with a custom CRM have a very simple business process, and most of them didn't have anything before, and that's why we implemented a CRM for them. So a lot of times when a company comes along and they're more mature or they are bigger, we will use, whatever CRM they're using, and we can build in automation and use API, application program interface, to push the leads to them and do all of that. But here's what I think is really important to kind of grasp and try to understand is I see some business owners bounce around over and over and over again, or they will use a CRM that they do not learn, they don't study, they don't understand all of its features. None of them are perfect. None of them are perfect. Why a lot of companies go with us with a custom CRM is they want simplicity for their team, they want simplicity for their staff, and they want something that is easy to use and integrate with the core functionality of their business. But without a CRM, your leads are going to get lost. And that is why we first got into the business of helping companies with their systems and building CRMs, is because we would notice leads would come in and I would say, well, who followed up with this lead? And like, oh yeah, we called them, but there was no notes, there was no data. So we started out by building just a lead CRM where all the leads would go. And then they eventually added, hey, can we do estimates through here? I said, well, I think we can. Can we do, ask for reviews on Google through here? And we did. So eventually we built it out where originally it was just for leads, but then as we build it out, we would build it according to their business. So some companies do invoicing through it. Some companies do simple estimates through it. Some close out projects and send out like thank you gifts and requests for reviews. There's a lot that can be done. And here's what I'm going to tell you. Most CRMs are customizable where you can add a tag and you can trigger automation. So it could be the central point for running your business. And so without a CRM, you're going to get lost. Leads are going to get buried, and it's worth having a CRM because you will be able to see exactly what's happening. And once you have your CRM in place, then you need a blueprint for how it's used and what is expected. So you have to be a manager too, and you have to hold people accountable. And so when I meet with business owners, oftentimes they started a company and they added some staff, and the staff was excited about this new company starting up, and the staff may have created a system. So for example, perhaps maybe one of your staff member knows more about the CRM than you do. Well, here's the kicker. They may not be using it the right way. They may not be adding notes or following up or making sure nothing slips through the crack, because a lot of times if they are not a manager themselves and they are just a technician, they're not worried about accountability, and they're going to say, yeah, I got it covered. Yeah, I got it covered. And so a lot of times if they set it up, you as a business owner who do not understand the system very well, you feel like, hey, you can't say anything because that staff member set things up. And so then a lot of times what I see is things continue to fall through the cracks. Remember, as a manager, you have to be the manager and ask tough questions. Dig in, ask them, how do I know if somebody's been called? How do I know how long till the estimates? And let them just help you understand that and push back, ask questions. So sometimes I'll have clients who will get a new lead, and I'll just give you an example. And I will look into the CRM, especially new clients, and I'll see that a lead has sat there for several days, maybe 4, 5, 6 days. So remember, this is a web lead. Someone filled out a form. Most of our clients get a lot of web leads, and people will fill out a form, ask for an estimate or a quote or someone to contact them. And the leads will go right into the CRM. There'll also be email notifications. And I'll click on the lead and I can see the last touch date is blank. So that means nobody has done anything. And what triggers an update on the last touch is when someone adds a note, or if someone sends a message, or if someone's scheduled, or they're moved to the next phase, then they'll get kicked out of new lead phase. And I'll say to the business owner, say, hey, why hasn't this lead been called? They've been in here 4 or 5 days. And then they'll check and they'll talk to the person in their staff and they'll say, well, hey, no, they've called them several times. But when I look in the CRM, there's no notes like, hey, left voicemail, called and left voicemail. There's no message sent to the prospect. So if there is nothing in the CRM, there's no messages and there are no notes, but the person says, yeah, I did that. If that is the case, there is no way of the entire team of knowing what happens or proving that a phone call actually happened. And here's what you kind of have to understand with all of this. If you build a system and people don't use it, then the system doesn't matter. So if you use a custom CRM or you implement a CRM and your staff will not follow those rules, you might as well not even have the system in place. So I want to encourage you, once you have your CRM or your process in place, you have to have a way of saying, hey, it's done. Even sometimes people respond via email. And I'll give you an example, like an email is sent out through a CRM and someone will respond to a person, but then they have to take whatever that action is needed from the email, put it into the CRM to make sure everything is done. So segment number 1, customer relationship manager, CRM, you got to have that in place and you have to enforce that people do that. Number 2, we're going to talk about operations and kind of workflows. So chaos will kill your efficiency, also kill your reputation. So if everybody is doing things a different way, your subcontractors are doing things a different way. And so there's no consistency. The way the phones are answered are different. The way estimates are sent are different. It's like a free-for-all. Everyone is doing what they want. There's no checklist. There's no, hey, this is how we do it. There is no standard operating procedures or SOPs for installs or estimates or service visits. You know, there's nothing like that. There's no tracking for how things should go. Then it's going to be chaos. So what you need to do is you need to document your workflows. And basically it's from A to Z. This is how we do it, how we answer phone calls, how we move people to, scheduled, what our service calls are like, what it should look like. And you as the entrepreneur and the manager needs to think about what this is like. Talk to your technicians that are doing the work and say, hey, what is the process? And then innovate and then say, hey, we are going to build a checklist and do training on this is how we do it. And what it is basically you are saying, this is how we do the business. This is how we do it. And that standard operating procedure, it can be a document. It really can have some checklists. It could be a carbon copy, form that they check off and they put on the manager's desk and say, hey, here's this estimate, here's this service call. It can be a number of different ways. But when you're creating this, normally you want to have some sort of like network document or Google document that has the process, that has the training. This is how we do it. And then if you're going to pass it on to your technicians, they are going to have something to check off either digitally or through a form or through their estimate sheet. They're going to have some sort of checklist so they know nothing slips through the cracks. And so you're going to have basically your operations workflow, your standard operating procedures written out that you can provide training that you can share with your staff and you can say, hey, here's what we're doing. And then if they have to provide proof of something that they've done, it could be a checklist, it could be through the CRM, them checking off a few boxes that things were done. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but then you have to hold, this is important, people accountable. So once you write your standard operating procedures, you write your operational workflow, and you have all of that done, and people say, yeah, I got it. We can do it. And you've got the systems in place. You can build it into your CRM, to your forms, all of that. Maybe they need to upload a picture when it's done. You can build that into your technology. All of that has to be done, and then it's time to hold people accountable. You cannot hold people accountable if there is no direction on systems. One time I was consulting with a business owner, and this is probably like 15 years ago, and we were talking about innovation, and I asked for example of when something slipped through the crack. And one of the ladies who was part of this gentleman's team, she's like, well, we just lost $1,400 today on an order because we messed up the shipping. And basically, they did not ask the right questions when they were getting ready to ship. It was delayed, and there was this big deal where they had to refund a big portion of the order, which was $1,400. And I said, well, whose fault was it that this was missed? And this is the thing, something was missed. And the answer was nobody. They just missed it, and they forgot to check it. So it's like, hey, we just kind of missed it. We all did, because there's a lot of people working on this. And so I said, okay. So in one girl, I kind of remember, she's like, well, I was supposed to do the last check, and she actually was a little emotional. I said, hey, don't be down on yourself. You guys were all supposed to do this. But here's the thing, there's no checklist in place. There's no systems in place. And so it's really not your fault. It's actually the business owner's fault. And he was sitting right there and wasn't really happy that I said that. But I expounded. I said, I'm not saying it's your fault. His name, I think, was John. And I said, John, it's not your fault directly. It's the fault of not having the system in place. And I expounded that if you don't have a system in place to check things off before every order is shipped of what to check, then you can't put blame on a team, because it's really the responsibility as business owners. So as a business owner building systems, it's your job to ask questions. Was there anything missed? And figure out where it was missed, who missed it, and build that into a system so nothing falls through the cracks. So it's standard operating procedures. All right, you're going to get that planned out. You are then going to provide training, and you're going to say, hey, is there clear? Are we clear on this? Can we do this? And then there is accountability to the person. So you can't hold someone accountable if you haven't trained them, if you haven't given them the procedure, and you haven't set clear expectations. So what are you holding them accountable to? No, you have to say in clarity, here's what we're doing. Then you give accountability, and then you can refine the process. And every month, as you continue to build systems, you're going to see, hey, there's things that we're missing that we need to build into our operating procedures. If the team members understand your standard operation, procedures, they've been trained and they understand the expectations, then they should be able to do their job, and less will fall through the cracks each week and each month. You should see an improvement in morale. You should have an improvement in just tons of less chaos and confusion and all of that. And if your expectations are reasonable and they know what they're doing, they're going to do a great job. Now, if your expectations are not reasonable, where they have too much to do and too many things to check, and they're not able to do everything, things are either going to fall behind, or they are not going to do all of the systems that you are wanting. So let's say your expectations are unreasonable and you're just asking too much. Well, if they are skipping the system, that is not good. They can't skip a system. You may have to take something off their plate or add more support, or they may just be in the wrong seat on the bus. So maybe they need to do something else. But if they don't do what is expected, and they never follow directions, and they never say, hey, I'm behind, then they need to be fired. If they complain continually about a system after they agreed that they could follow it, then they also should be fired. If they complain to others about a system that they agreed to that they could do, then they should be fired. And this is important. You can never scale a company when everyone has their own way of doing things. It won't happen. It will never grow, because you cannot build consistency across a team. It's not even a team. It's a bunch of individuals doing whatever they want. And it will show in morale. It will show in how things feel in the office, in tension. It will show in your online reviews. And so you have to build standard operating procedures. You have to train them. Are they going to do them? Are they going to be accountable to them? And if they will, then you're going to see how your business flows on a day-to-day is going to dramatically improve. And there's 1,000 ways of doing this, but the best way to get started is thinking through answering phone calls, all right? From answering phone calls to scheduling, and just think through an entire project, how it goes, what it looks like, that entire process. So we've got your customer management, which is your CRM. Then we've got like how the business runs, how all that goes. Another segment that you really need some systems in is with financing and your financial data. And so you really need to be able to measure and see your financial numbers and how that's going. And some of the key systems in there are how you do estimates and price a project. You got to make sure there's a system in there. And why it matters so much is because you may have one project that you don't make much money on and you do a lot of work. And then you may have a smaller project that you actually do well on, and and it's easier. So you got to be able to figure out and systemize how you price a project. You really need to get a measurement on conversion data and like how leads are converting. You need a system for invoicing and tracking payments tied to jobs. And you can put all of this in a dashboard or a KPI. So a few questions. And I will say that you can overcomplicate this. You can spend so much time working on this and it becomes totally chaotic, and you don't need that. You just need simple systems in place. And so, for examples, estimates. How do you send out estimates? Are they sent via text, email? All right. Are they being delivered? Are they going to spam? Are they priced correctly? Are they sent out on time? Is there a follow-up process for estimates that go out? Is there accountability for the salesman if he is sending those out? Is there accountability for how he follows up? And a lot of that may be like, okay, how are we going to check this? Is he putting notes in the CRM? Like, when was the dates sent out? And you look at that data, but there has to be a system or something in place for estimates. The other thing is conversion data. So what are the salesman's conversion rates? What are the estimate conversion rates? What makes the conversion rate higher or what makes it lower? Who has the best conversion rates? How can you convert more leads to appointments? How can you convert more appointments to estimates, more estimates to close sales? Whatever your process is. But if you are meeting with in-home and you are sending out estimates for, say, larger jobs, you should have a 30 to 50% close rate on estimates that you sent out where you have met face-to-face with a business owner. So 30% would be on the average to low side, 40% average, 50% on the high side. And if you do even better, you have some really strong salespeople and some really good collaterals, or perhaps your prices are too low. So by looking at systems for the conversion data, you'll be able to figure out how to make improvements on your estimates and all of the things in between. Another thing that is super important is how you collect payment. So can you streamline your payments so it's faster, right? If people, you're like, oh, Matt, I don't want to take credit cards. Well, people can pay online through their checking account as well. So how can you get people to pay faster? How do you handle late payments, late payment notices? How are receipts sent so it will save you more time? How are the reminders sent for late invoice? Who handles it? When is it handled? And so you can build that into a system so that you know what is going on financially. If you never look at your cash flow or you never look at that data, you can find yourself in a very stressful time as a business owner. And if you are always worried about cash flow and who's doing that, then your stress is going to get onto your staff as well. So all of this, it can be tied into KPIs, or key performance indicators. And these can be built into your CRM as the company matures. But the KPI data, it keeps a pulse on things. And it's kind of can be on a dashboard. It can be somewhere so you can see. So when we meet with a business owner, what are the most important things usually? And a lot of times it's number of leads, it's number of appointments, It's estimates, estimate close rates, things of this nature. We also look at all of the marketing data like local calls. We look at number of Google reviews and how that is increasing. We look at the number of organic calls. We look at the number of paid calls through paid ads. We look at overall traffic, and there's a number of these things which we build into a marketing dashboard so we can quickly look at that data. So most companies go for the KPI dashboard first, and I wouldn't do that. Build your internal systems first, and then begin to look at that data on a spreadsheet or something. And then once you have the accountability and the systems in place, then build the dashboard. So I mean, with a lot of business owners, like, I just need all this KPI data right there. But really, they're not keeping anyone accountable at all to begin with. And so there is no need for a KPI if the accountability isn't in place. So we've talked through 3 different segments so far. We talked through your customer relationship manager. We've talked through like overall company operations and procedures and all of that. And then we talked about the financial data and having some KPIs in place. The last thing I'll bring up is internal communication and how to innovate and improve your system. So that is called the feedback loop. And so you need to be able to proactively communicate to all of your team. That includes if you have subcontractors, anyone that you would say, hey, they're part of our team. And if you should be in touch with your team leaders every week, hey, here's what's going on, here's what's coming up. And if your team leaders are leading other people, they should be in touch with their people every week as well. And so if you can open communication, it will reduce bottlenecks. It will make sure that that info is accessible for everyone, not just the owner. And so sometimes by communicating and opening up communication on a weekly basis, hey, how can I help? How can I serve? How can we make this better? Even with contractors, a lot of our clients that are winning and doing well, they meet every week before the week. Here's what's going on the projects. Let's talk through that. And they'll just get everything organized and ready to go for the week. So I think that's a really good thing to do as well. A lot of people do text messaging in this, and that's a very basic way, or a phone call. You could do a phone call meeting. Those are good, but weekly meetings, an overview of the week ahead is a great way to make sure communication is open. During those meetings, a lot of times your people will say, hey, we've got a problem. You could also talk through what happened last week. How did last week go? And in agile development and growth for like CRMs and like whenever you're planning out SaaS applications, they do what's called agile development. We do that also here at Grow Inc. for how we grow our clients' businesses. But in agile development, they do sprints and they say, hey, what did we do wrong here? And then how can we make it better here? And they'll plan out what is next. But when you have feedback in these meetings, then you can go in and say, okay, we missed that in the system. Let's add this to this checklist. Let's add this to this system. So I would suggest that you do weekly meetings. You can also look at notes in your CRM. So sometimes when a contractor is going to close out a project, which they could in your CRM or have access to it, they could add a note on how things went. So then maybe you don't need to have a meeting because you can see those notes in the CRM. I would suggest that you do monthly meetings for your company. I think sometimes if you just do a training, even if it's, guys that aren't part of your staff, but you're giving them constant work, you could say, hey, can you come in for lunch and us to talk just for a little bit on these days? You can figure out a way to make it worth it for them where you're training them, especially if you are giving them work at their employees. I would suggest monthly meetings. And you are basically providing training. Hey, here's what we're doing. Here's how we innovated. Here's the changes. Is there any feedback you have? And you're basically allowing them to see the system and to participate in the system. Whenever we have employees, and I've led employees for 25 years. We've always tried to do quarterly reviews instead of annual reviews. And in the early days, of course, I did annual reviews. But later I started doing quarterly reviews. And I basically just put a note in Apple, my little Apple Notes. And I said, here's the things that you are accountable for and you own. And we're going to kind of go through these things. Is there anything wrong with this? Is there anything we can do better? Can you do all of these things? Can you manage all of these things? Yes, yes, yes. Okay, here's where you need help. Okay, I'm going to work on this. And then I would take those notes each quarter and go back to them and say, hey, how can we make it better for you? And they were able to give me feedback on what was working and what wasn't so that we could then improve the system. But if you build in systems and there's no communication, the systems are never going to get better. So you have to have proactive communication to them. And then you also need to be able to receive feedback in this feedback loop so that you can make things better. Feedback will help you see how your employees are doing. It will also tell you, hey, this is an area we need to work in. It's not just driving results. You're hearing feedback from them, and they will help you actually build the systems. It will make them more happy as well. So as we kind of wrap up, I want to give a few questions that we hear often about systems. I want to give you some takeaways. It's just a couple things to remember. Systems aren't just software, so you have to remember that, but it's kind of like this architecture for how your business runs. And it may be CRM, it may be a Google Sheet, it may be a couple forms and folders for the guys out in the field. But without systems, you will collapse on yourself because there is no clarity. So I'll ask you just a couple of questions like, how's your CRM? How are your internal checklists, for standard operating procedures? Are you looking at the financial data for estimates and having systems for your money? Are you meeting with your team and getting communication and training to them, and then also receiving feedback in the feedback loop? And I will just say, man, it isn't easy. And if you're just starting out, you probably are like, gosh, I don't have time to do all of this. And I just want to encourage you, don't be discouraged. You as the entrepreneur, as the business owner, you have to find time to work on your business and not just in your business, which we talked about in this 4-part training already. So I would say block out time to work on your business, block out time to work on your business so that you can build systems and you can do things. You cannot always be the technician, and you have to go in, you have to brainstorm as an entrepreneur, you got to implement as a manager, and you have to get these systems in place. And it takes time to build the infrastructure. And if it were easy, everyone would have amazing systems in place and it would be very easy to scale. But there's a reason why some companies can scale and grow, and it's because they have this infrastructure in place. And so I meet entrepreneurs every year, all the time. They seek out Grow Inc. and they think of marketing is a way to scale. And I will tell you, marketing, it plays a huge role. And we're going to talk about that all in the next episode. But I'll basically meet with entrepreneurs and I'll say, well, hey, what are you doing in revenue? And this is what I find. It's part of our application process. If they are under $1 million in revenue, they are usually younger companies with very few systems in place. And usually it's the owner that knows how to do everything, and they've got some contractors out there that do a good job, and it's usually not a whole lot of systems in place. So if they're under $1 million or maybe 1.5 maybe, the owner usually is in one of two roles. Especially if they're a lot smaller, the owner is a technician, so they're doing all the work themselves and they really don't have any systems in place. Sometimes the owner is an entrepreneur and they're dreaming so big and they've got all these ideas and they're so ADD that they have so many ideas and people doing a little bit of everything, but they still have no systems in place either. And so my suggestion is if you're in this range and you feel like you're collapsing on top of each other, you got to go back, become the manager for a season, build systems so that other people can do the work too. If you are touching everything, the problem is not your people. If you are touching and involved with everything, the problem is you don't have any systems or training in place so that you can empower others. And if you do training, empowerment, then you hold people accountable. So the other people that I meet is at companies that are a little bit larger. And so let me just say this. If you're thinking about scaling, I want to go back one step. If you're thinking about scaling and you live only in the entrepreneurship, vision, dreaming, all over the place area, but you never hold people accountable to the systems that you built, or you never build any systems, then you're in trouble and you may not even know it. And what I want to say is you'll come and you'll want a bunch of leads to scale. You may even hire marketing and you may even start growing, but you'll see that you soon collapse on yourself because there's no systems in place to make sure you do a good job. And what I see with companies like this is if they have bad reviews because of their subcontractors or how they treat people or how they answer calls or whatever it is, it will just compound. So if a company doesn't do a good job and you add marketing to it, it doesn't make them grow. It just exposes how bad their systems are in the beginning. So bad reviews are going to follow you. And if you're planning on scaling, I would just encourage you, take a moment and look internally about how you'll deliver the absolute best experience for your customers. And if you have that nailed down, adding marketing is very, very easy. So this is for companies in the, I'd say from startup to $1.5 million, $2 million in revenues. Now, when companies are more mature and they're probably in the like 3 to 5 million range or even higher, a lot of times they have stronger systems in place. They've been doing this longer. They have employees. And they were forced to build systems to scale to the level that they're at. So they may not have had a big influx of marketing, but they have systems in place. And if they have systems in place and then they add marketing, they can scale so much easier. So it's easier to scale a company that has systems in place. When companies become even larger, and let's say these are very mature companies that have grown and there's mid-level managers, and maybe this is 20 million and up, there's a different problem because now there's so many managers who aren't able to adapt to change. And they're like, well, hey, this is how we're doing it. And hey, and I built this system for finances. And hey, and we're using this. So a lot of times the managers don't want to change. And so for them to scale, it's hard as well because these managers are not entrepreneurial minded. They're not willing to change and adapt and work together as a team so a business can hit a plateau. And so the business owner has to be willing to tackle stagnation of management and push so that they will not resist change, and they'll have to push them hard so they don't rest on their past successes. For them, scaling is easier if all managers understand why they need to innovate. And if the entire team is humble and they care about each other and the company, they'll be willing to try new things, and then the company can scale even further. The good news is a lot of times companies that are mature, they have capital to scale. And so they can invest in marketing expenses and they can grow even easier. It is absolutely hardest for startups to scale. And I want to say this, it's easy to go from 5 to 10, like that's doubling. It's really hard to go from a young company that doesn't have systems and grow by 100, 200%. It's incredibly difficult for that. It's also hard for companies who are not willing to hold their employees accountable and their managers accountable to be willing to change and innovate and work together. And so I want to give you a couple closing FAQs or frequently asked questions or things I hear all the time that I'm like, man, I want to talk about this. And so I'll get an email from a client or a prospect. Hey, Matt, I read a story about this company. There'll be a link there. And they said they went from 2 million to 20 million. And this is what I want to tell you. Stop comparing yourself to other entrepreneurs. It is going to kill the joy of the journey. So when I see stories like that, I ask about their past. Does the company bootstrap, or did they sell a previous business and pour millions of dollars into marketing? So stop comparing yourself. Your situation is your situation, right? And you're going to put pressure on your staff, on you, and all the people you need to be committed to the journey, right, for you. You're going to put pressure on them by comparing other companies all the time. You have to walk your walk. You have to walk your calling and your plan and your business. And if that company went to 2 to 20 million, more than likely there's something below the surface, especially in a short amount of time, something below the surface that you don't see. In almost every single case, I see that there's something like this. There's something like an investment company that dropped a ton of money into it to scale. Or there's a business owner who had 20 years of experience doing one industry. He sold it, then he started this industry, and he dropped millions of dollars into sale. Who knows what their ROI? If you are bootstrapping, you have to put on blinders just like a horse would running a race and say, I'm going to run my race. Another question I want to answer. What is the number one rule for building systems? And this one's kind of hard. It's accountability. If you build a system and nobody is using it, then the staff doesn't respect you as a leader. Maybe you didn't train them right, all right? So go out and train them again and say, hey, I've trained you on this. Do you understand this is what we are going to do now? Can you do it? Yes, boss, I can. Train them and then hold them accountable for doing that process, for doing those tasks. If they don't, and you cannot keep them accountable, you have to fire them. Any good books that you would recommend for scaling? And I just want to give you a couple here. So I love the E-Myth Revisited. It is a very old book. It's a fable book, so it's an easy read. It's like a story. It's one of my favorites of all time that really shaped how I work and lead. It's an older book, like I said, but it's great for entrepreneurs. Another book is by Patrick Lencioni. He's one of the authors that I read for a lot of years. If you are a more larger company, and so maybe you are like, hey, we really want to scale big, and there's politics in the office, and you've got managers that kind of control their little area. There's a book called Silos, Politics, and Turf Wars. And this book is really, really interesting because it talks about how to break down the silos and all the politics so everybody works together. That's also a fable, and it's one of my favorite books as well. If you're looking to hire people and you're like, hey, I got to fire some people and I want to hire some people. In our company, we hire what I call, and actually all of our businesses that I own or the organizations that I'm a part of, we look for what I call entree-spirited people. And so when I was in the mortgage business, trained a lot of people to do mortgages, a lot of people from scratch, and that's how we built our team. And then when I owned a marketing consulting business, all these years, we also had a training program where we trained, entrepreneurs on how to become marketing consultants. So I have a lot of friends out there that are marketing consultants and entrepreneurs that went through our training. And so what I will tell you is I think there's certain characteristics of an entrepreneur. And so my book called The Entree Spirit, The DNA of Self-Starters and People Who Get Things Done, that book may help. And that book is about entrepreneurship and the values we hire on here at Grow Inc. in our organizations that I'm a part of. And so that may be helpful for you as well. That said, how do you get started? Matt, how do I get started building systems? What I would do is clear off everything off of your desk, everything but a sheet of paper, and write out the areas that you need to get organized. And it may just be a word. It may be like sales. It may be like, follow-up. It may be, like installing or communication. And write those out and then take from that list, begin to brainstorm on the areas that you see problems with, and then begin to brainstorm about how you can fix those areas. I hope you're getting a lot out of this 4-part series on scaling. Now, in our next episode, I'm going to walk you through the marketing checklist. And this is the blueprint for scaling your business, and I think you're going to find it really, really helpful. And so I'm going to go through in our next episode is all that really goes into a growth campaign. And I just want to remind you that you can claim all of our free resources at grow.inc. That's www.gro.inc. There's a training book. I also have it in audio format. There's a marketing checklist. There's software tools. We also added some new audio or video courses that are going to make it really, really helpful as part of our YouTube channel. Well, that's it for today, folks. I hope you're having a great day, and thanks so much for listening.
Thanks for listening to the podcast today. We hope you found today's episode helpful and informative. For more information about Grow Inc. and to request our free marketing blueprint ebook and other resources, please visit www.grow.inc. That's GRO.inc. We'll catch you in the next episode.